Okay, so this is going to be the lesson titled Early Strikes and Unions. So let's go ahead and get started on that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the video first. Now there is a reading that you were given, so I need you to go ahead and read these three stories about strikes, and then the videos will support them. So first read these, and then you can watch the video. All right? So let's go ahead and watch the video. And here we go. And then we'll do the writing after the video plays. Remember, you can always stop the video for watching the video that's on here and for writing purposes. So you can always pause the video so that you can write.
In 1877, millions of Americans were out of work, and many of those still employed were barely scraping by. That July, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad paid the company's stockholders a 10% dividend. At the same time, they cut workers' wages by 10%. Workers were outraged. Their wages had already been slashed several times. A strike began in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and spread along the rail lines. When the strike reached Baltimore, the governor called in the 5th and 6th Regiments of the Maryland National Guard to protect the railroad and suppress the strike. Crowds gathered when the alarm bells rang throughout the city, signaling the militia's assembly. Workers from other industries who hoped a victory on the railroad would lead to better working conditions for all workers were joined by the wives and mothers of the strikers. They threw rocks and bricks at the soldiers marching toward Camden Station. In response, the men of the 6th Regiment fired into the assembly, wounding and killing several people. Soldiers of the 5th Regiment forced their way into Camden Station without firing on the civilians. Nonetheless, the crowd of 15,000 people were outraged by the injuries and deaths inflicted by the militia. They attempted to burn down the station. They succeeded in damaging one engine and burning several train cars as well as the passenger platform. Federal troops arrived to help the city police and militia suppress the violence. Some rioters were arrested. 11 people lay dead and several more were wounded. The violence that marred protests up and down the rail lines frightened many Americans. The strike was unsuccessful. Although increasing numbers of workers attempted to unionize in the aftermath of the strike, industry leaders were often successful in denying workers' rights to unionize.
Although the steel industry in general was fiercely opposed to labor unions, magnate Andrew Carnegie accepted their value in the workplace. However, when workers at his Homestead Steel Works in Pennsylvania demanded increased wages, Carnegie sought to break the union. The strike started on June 30th, but became a part of history on July 6th. That's when 300 Pinkerton agents hired by the industry arrived. An intense battle ensued, with both sides armed. By the time the smoke cleared, 9 strikers and 3 agents lay dead, and the union suffered a major defeat.
In 1894 was a rather dramatic strike that took place. The Pullman workers in Chicago went out on strike. The federal government intervened because the Pullman cars, basically with a boycott of them, stopped the American railway system from operating. So the federal troops were called out to crush the strike. People were killed. It was a terribly violent strike. It was not a happy day for labor. Government, being politicians, wanted labor on their side, and so as a concession, they then passed legislation authorizing a Labor Day, first Monday in September from then on.
Okay, so what did all the early strikes have in common is the theme. You should have heard that all three of them, you should have heard things that, there was actually 3 major things that all of them had in common. When we do our writing, we should be able to see this. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to, let's go and full screen this. That'll be good. All right. So anyway, so early strikes. The first one is the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. What happened? Well, on that one, the owners cut wages by 10%. The government sided with the owner, and it ended in violence. What's the end result? The strike failed to meet its goals. All right, you can pause the video to do the writing for this. I'm going to continue. Then there was the second strike. Homestead Steel Strike of 1892. Okay, that one's one with Carnegie. Carnegie cut wages. Frick sent in the Pinkertons. Remember, the Pinkertons is the private police force that worked for Carnegie. But when they failed to break up the strike, the government sent in the militia to stop the strike. 8,000 troops came in to help Carnegie out to stop the steel strike. And of course, this strike failed to meet its goals as well. And that was violent, very violent as well. Lots of people lost their lives in this one, okay, in gun battles. All right, and then go and pause the video if you need to write that. Okay, the last one that we're going to cover on this video is the Pullman Strike, 1894. What happened? Well, they cut wages and had unfair hours, and the government, once again, when the strike happened, sided with the owner. The military and the police were sent in to stop the strike. And the strike failed to meet its goals. So you should see a pattern of things going on that are the same. Okay? So all the strikes fail and to meet their goals. They were all very violent, and they were all supported by the government. Not the government supported the owner of the businesses, not the workers. And that was the pattern of early strikes. Okay, so now we're going to go to another part of the graphic organizer about unions and some vocabulary about unions. Okay, now all these issues, I mean, remember we just finished the industrial age and all the problems of the workplace. You know, low wages, unsafe working conditions, child labor. So there's a lot of workplace issues. All right, so let's go to the other side of where there's the vocabulary, and I've got some pictures that we can use to define them. Let's see if I can get to them. Okay, let's see. Here they are. Okay, here's the first one. Okay, so this one here, what do you see going on in the picture? You should see there's a group of people here. Here's one that looks like them. So these hats represent workers. All right? So these workers collect together and elect a leader. And the leader of the worker goes and talks to the factory owners. And they negotiate. Maybe they want better wages. Maybe they want better working conditions. Maybe they want better benefits. And if they don't get what they want, they go on strike. Okay? And this is called collective bargaining. So they collect together, send a leader, and bargain with the boss, the owner of the factory. Okay? And it's usually about working conditions. Okay? Or workers' rights. Okay? So let me shrink this. And let's go back to let's go to our graphic organizer. Okay? All right, so collective bargaining. On your sheet, it's when a group of workers form a union and vote for a leader to meet with the factory owners to negotiate. If it fails, they strike. And that is collective bargaining. So write that in on your form. And you can pause to write. I'm going to continue. All right, let's go to the next picture. Okay, so what do you see here? You see a stick man who is welding, okay? And can anybody just pick up a welding device and make welds on metal and do a good job? No, that's a skill. And it's really hard to find, if this person were to quit or go on strike, it would be very difficult to find a replacement. So skilled workers are somebody with skills, and they're hard to replace. So let's go ahead and put that in our definition. Okay, so let's lower it down. Skilled workers. Skilled workers are hard to replace, more power during strikes. So the boss is more likely to listen to workers who are skilled and then instead of unskilled. Okay, so skilled workers are hard to replace, and they demand respect in the workplace. Okay, you can pause it if you need more time. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this here shows, now this is not demeaning the job, it's actually sanitary workers are very important in society, and we know that firsthand after hurricanes and our trash starts to pile up. It really makes life difficult. So I'm not saying the job is not important. It is important. But what I will say is that this sort of job is unskilled, meaning that if this person quits or goes on strike, they're easy to replace because you can show somebody else how to do that job rather quickly. So that's unskilled. Okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and put that in. Unskilled workers are easy to replace with scab workers. Now, scab workers are, that's what they call people when you go on strike and the boss hires other people while you're on strike, and those people, they call them scabs. And so when they cross the picket line and fill those jobs, it makes the workers on strike mad. And so they call them scab because it's kind of a gross word. I guess it's meaning like there's still a wound, but you're not bleeding. So they stop the bleeding per se. Okay, it's a metaphor. So unskilled workers are easy to replace. So when you go on strike, you don't have as much power. The boss can find other people to do the job. So it pays to be skilled. All right. So let's go ahead and go to this one. Let's finish the vocabulary words. Okay. This is a do not hire list. So you got a guy named Frank Smith. You got Juan Garcia. You got Peggy Johnson. You got An Vo. These are all people that have been put on a list, and the other factory owners get the list and say, don't hire these people because they ask for higher wages. They'll go on strike and they'll demand better working conditions. So don't hire them. And so if the factory owners all work together not to hire people, then that's a scary thing to be put on this list. And this list is called a blacklist. It's blacklisting people. Okay? So let's go ahead and put the definition for that. Blacklist is when workers who strike are put on a list so that factories won't hire them, and that makes you afraid to go on strike. And you can pause the video to put in the words, and I'm going on to the next one. The next vocabulary word, this is union members only. And what that means is they're not going to hire you unless you join a union. So it's the opposite of a blacklist. So if you want to work in this certain place, once unions are set in there, they'll say, no, you have to join the union. You can't work here without joining a union. Okay? And you're kind of forced into it that way. So it's the opposite of blacklisting. And that's called a closed shop. You have to join a union to get hired. All right? All right. So let's answer this question right quick. Which workers are easy to replace? It's unskilled workers, because you can find somebody and show them really quickly how to do a job, and that's an unskilled job. Unskilled workers are easy to replace. They don't have much of a voice when it comes to going on strike. They can find other people easy. And scabs, let's go ahead and put that in. Scabs are workers who cross the picket line. They cross over a strike to fill the jobs of strikers. And that can cause a lot of violence when those workers coming in to do the jobs of the people on strike. That can be very violent when they encounter each other. Okay? All right. So now we're going to go to the top and fill in these boxes, and we're going to still use these little cartoons to do it. All right? So let me kind of fix this right quick. All right, so let's go to another picture, and let's go to this one first. Okay, in this drawing, you can see who can join the union we're about to talk about. So who can join? Well, skilled workers only. It doesn't matter your race, but you have to be a man. So you have to be a male skilled worker. Doesn't matter your race. Now unions were, they led the movement for not judging people by their skin color, but by judging what their skills are. Okay, so it's not who you are; it's about your skills. Okay, so in this union is actually called the American Federation of Labor. They are still around today. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill this in. All right. So unions, which kinds worked is what our goal is for this. Okay, this one here is called the American Federation of Labor. That's the name of it, otherwise known as AFL. Let's go ahead and write that in because that's a good way to abbreviate it. AFL. Okay, and the person who started it, this labor union, is Samuel Gompers, who could join all men, skilled workers only. And I just drew the picture that I just showed you, those stick guys, okay? And they're holding signs when they go on strike, okay? And this says, were they successful when striking? The answer is yes. Why? Because skilled workers are hard to replace, okay? So that's Samuel Gompers, AFL, American Federation of Labor, and they had skilled workers only, and that is why they're around even today. Now, women can join today. Okay, so let's do the last union. Okay, so this union actually does not discriminate. It has skilled, it has unskilled, it has men, it has women, it has minority as well. So they did not judge people. They let everyone in. It didn't matter if you were skilled, unskilled, man, woman. It didn't matter your race. Okay, so you would think this would be a really strong union because the large numbers of people that they would be listened to by these companies. But the fact is that they're no longer around. So let's analyze this right quick in our boxes. Okay, all right. So this one here is the Knights of Labor. And it was started by a man named Terence Powderly, Powderly, who could join men, women, minorities, skilled, and unskilled workers, which is represented in this picture. You can draw that, okay? Or if you want to do something different, you may. Were they successful when striking? No, even though there was more of them and more diverse. The problem is they're unskilled workers and they're easy to replace. So when they went on strike, the boss really didn't respect because they were easy to replace. They had that was a weak link right here. Okay, so anyway, so you could see the importance of a union is the more skilled you are, the more voice that more of a voice you have when you strike. Okay, now remember. Collective bargaining is what they're doing here. Okay, so it's when a group of workers from a union and they vote for a leader to meet with the factory owner to negotiate. If it fails, they strike. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. All right, so that there is your assignment for early strikes and unions. All right, thanks for watching. And don't forget to read the handout that goes with this as well. Thank you.